All right, everybody, let's get started. So, you should have completed the weekly check-in for week number 9. Once you've completed that, you can close your devices, but keep them on the table because we will be using them later in our lesson. So again, close them so that way I know you're listening to me. And we're ready for some notes and some revision. Dante. There we go. Close it, close it, close it, close it. All right, do you have a science notebook? Yeah, take that out. Got it? All right. So let's just read written down. No, don't check now. Check later. All right, so first thing we need to write down is the date. Wires. There we go. So date for today is the 28th of March, 22. The other thing we want to make sure that's in our books so that way we have all the notes and we're nice and organized is our learning intention. Make sure I spell that right. Oh, yeah. So what's our learning intention for today? Revise. Yep. I'm going to move that over so I can see it. Revise what is force. And how that relates to motion. Cool. So you guys should have that both in your notebooks. Yes. If not, make sure you copy that down. And then last thing was the Mahia, the do now. What was our do now? It was just the weekly check-in. So we'll just write that down. So we don't have to worry about answering any sort of questions in our books today. Sound good? All right, everybody got that down? I'll leave it out for a second because I'm mindful that there's still people that are writing, and then we can move on and start talking about what we're doing for today's lesson. Just doing a little quick walk around to see how you guys are doing. You can sit up on the book there. Looking good. All righty. Cool. First, bring the camera back to the PowerPoint. If you guys don't pay attention, don't forget it's also on my whiteboard on the side. So don't freak out that I'm now changing it. It's still on the board. Cool. All right, let's start to develop those relationships. And also I'm mindful that we haven't had a lot of time together. We've been actually basically away from each other for about a month. So I think it's really good to share. I'm not going to pick randomly this time because I'm just mindful that people may not have had a great time remote learning. I don't want to pick on someone to tell me that. Because I don't want to share what the best thing about remote learning was. Yeah, sleeping? Yeah, I have to agree with you. I really appreciated the sleeping. That they like get doing work. Was it a lot of work? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to know something about it? About the remote learning? But you guys couldn't like it. It's really good preparation for university. Because when you're at university, you're not going to get that hand holding that you do in high school and like school in general. You're going to have to work alone more so. So you're going to go to a lecture. The lecture will be about an hour. The teacher's going to talk for the full hour, and then you're just going to go home and you'll be like, you got to process it for yourself. You got to figure out what you're going to do to study that. So it's really good to kind of get you ready for uni. All right. Next question. Anybody want to share their micro goal for this week? Make sure those masks are over your noses. Anybody have a small goal for this week? Just catch up on the work. Yeah, I was very mindful that you guys probably need a little bit of catch up. So we'll spend today's lesson and our next lesson doing revision. I figured that'd be good. Cool. Anybody else have anything else they want to share? No. All right. So let's switch goals and think about what we are learning. So to recap, while we did the remote learning, we talked about forces, we talked about motion, we talked about friction, and we talked about gravity. We also did a little bit on energy as well, but I'll do that in our next lesson. So just to kind of talk about today, what I want us to do is just revise the forces and the motion component of what we did. And then in our next lesson, we'll talk about energy. Sound good? All right. Let's see. Since it's the start of the week, it's important for us to think about our weekly Sakatoki. In this case, we are thinking about nurture. And if you nurture the seed, it will bloom. So another way to think about that is all we need is love and care to fully realize our potential. So I think it's a great kind of piece of advice starting this week with our first kind of week back into on-site learning. Make sure you guys are being really kind to each other. I'm trying that really hard because I'm mindful that it has been kind of a disruption. So I'm being very patient and very kind of understanding that you may not have had a chance to really pick up all the material. But I do want to make sure that we are reaching our full potential and playing our catch-up. So yeah, just be nice to each other, be kind to each other, but also keep that responsibility and that high expectation of making sure you're wearing a mask properly and things like that. Sound good? All right, cool. So let's talk about today's lesson plan. First thing I want to do is look at mind maps and use mind maps as our form of revision. We'll do that twice. So the first time for mind map, we're just going to think about what force it is. And just kind of get some of the key vocabulary down. We'll watch a little video on what is heavier. Then we'll do some book work from a SciPad page, just to reinforce what we've talked about. Then I'll give you guys some more revision notes on relating that force into motion. We'll play a Kahoot about balanced and unbalanced forces, and then we'll wrap up with you guys looking into sports and how you can apply the force and motion into some sport examples. Sound good? All right, cool. Let's begin some content. All right, cool. On our checklist, if you guys want, we are thinking about 12, 17, 19, 20, and 21. These are all things that you guys did during the remote learning. So we want to make sure they get ticked off our list today. So back to the document camera. So we do things a little bit out of order because some of it, I remember. We will integrate some of the other stuff for the scientific method when we start doing some more experiments and collecting data. So I wanted to teach a little bit of content and then we'll go back to scientific stuff. So what did I say we were ticking off? 12, 13, 15. 12, 17, 19, 20, and 21. So you guys can tick that off your list. All right, I'm going to move the document camera again, but be mindful that it is on that whiteboard on the side. So we are going to start with a little mind map. Let me just grab the mind map I wrote yesterday to help us revise. All right. Move that wire out of the way. So hopefully you guys have a full page for your mind map. If not, you can flip to a new page. This is enough because I have my little date and learning intention. I'll do my mind map over here. But you want a decent amount of space for the mind map. I wanted to do a mind map because, one, it's a really good way to see how things interrelate together. It also kind of cuts down on the amount of writing that you guys will need to do because you're mainly using the thought bubbles as means to kind of pull all your ideas together. Does that sound good? All right. So the first thing we need to think about when we're doing our little mind map is we need to think about what this mind map is about, and that is all about force. So force goes into my center of my mind map. Now, do you guys remember what a force is? What is it? That's a push. What's the other one? So it's a push or pull. Now that's my key main idea. So I'm just going to do a big kind of thought bubble there. And I'm going to bounce my ideas off of there. Are we good so far? Yes. All right, make sure you're copying down the same thing into your science notebooks as well. All right. Might do it over here. So when we think about forces is our versions of forces. Now, if you guys remember, there were two ones that I want us to think about. Any ideas of what I mean by those versions? How about if I say the word contact and non-contact? So there's non-contact forces and there's also contact forces, right? What are some examples of a non-contact force? Does anyone remember? I wish. Not because wind has air molecules that will push you. What's keeping us to the ground right now? Gravity. So would gravity be a non-contact force? Because if I have my white out and I let go, is it going to pull down? Yes, because it's going to pull and fall to the ground. Is there any physical thing that's actually pulling it to the ground? No, so that's an example of a non-contact. So gravity would be one. What's another one? Think about the fridge and what you might stick to the fridge. Magnets, there you go. Yeah, that's another one. All right. Contact forces, what are some examples? Just you push, you physically pull something. What's the thing that is when we're on the ground? Rollerblades. And let's say you're rollerblading on carpet versus like a smooth tile floor. What's the difference? Carpet, you'll fall on carpet's quite hard, isn't it? Why is that? There's more friction. So if we're thinking about a contact force, an example of that would be friction. And we can have smooth. And then we can also have rough. Which one requires more force to move? Carpet. So the carpet is the rough one. So you need more force for this one. What about smooth? Do you need lesser force then? Yeah. Does this help kind of build your memory of this material? All right. The other thing to kind of think about that I want as our kind of beginning notes is thinking about the directions of force. Directions. So if you remember, we have these little diagrams with little boxes. So what's kind of pulling us down? Gravity. And then what's preventing my, say for example, the phone that's on my table right now, what's preventing it from falling through onto the ground? The table. What's the table providing? Starts with an S. Safety? No. Different S word. Structure is a good guess. Support's the word I'm looking for. So this is providing support so that way it doesn't fall through. All right. And so these are examples of vertical forces, right? So vertical is the up and down. All right, we're thinking about side to side. If I want to push this little trash can off my desk, what's that? Forward force. It's push. It could be an engine. It could be any sort of energy. So that's my push. Or it could be something that's pulling as well. What's resisting it? What's making it hard for me to push it? It's heavy. What about, again, think about how it relates in here. If I was pushing this on a carpet versus on a smooth floor, what's opposing me pushing it? Smooth floor, the rough floor, it is the friction. So do you see how those two ideas tie together? Friction's there, friction's there. Yeah? What else was I going to say about friction? I think there was something else I wanted to say about friction. Oh, now I remember. When we are flying a plane, it's off the ground. So the friction definition, or sorry, the word we use for friction changes. What's the word when we're talking about wind resistance or water resistance? Starts with a D. Drag. That's the other thing that's opposing any forward momentum. Does that make sense? Kind of. That's all right. It's only kind of understanding it. All right. With the gravity, some things to keep in mind is the idea of mass versus weight. So if I take the mass of an object and I multiply it by gravity, I get the weight. Are we good with that so far? Does this hopefully ring a bell? So mass is talking about the amount of matter. And weight is talking about the force of that matter. So weight is just another example of force. Is that okay so far? So if I go to the moon, does my mass change? Yes. If I go to the moon, my mass, the amount of matter I am? No. Does my weight change when I go to the moon? Yes, it does. It gets lighter. It gets lighter. Does that make sense? And why is that? There's less gravity on the moon, isn't there? Yep. Let's say I'm trying to push an object. Why is it so hard for me to push a car versus pushing like a bike? Car learning, this is stuff that we've covered. Nope, well, that's not good. That's okay. We're going to do some more practice. You just kidding? All right, shall we move on and practice some of this material? Let's take a break from the notes. All right, let me just turn our little sad audio on. So I thought it would be fun to watch this video, and then we have some iPad. A long time to use that. All right, cool. Here we go. Oh, he's going to give you a timer. I'll pause it here. Which one's heavier? Kilogram of steel? Or are they the same? You think they're the same? All right. Do you guys understand which is the right answer?
Yes.
They're both the same. They both weigh the same because they're both a kilogram. Because kilogram is a measurement. Steel is denser than feathers, and so it will be heavier. But if I have the same kilogram amount, they're going to feel the same weight, the same mass. Are we okay with that? Hopefully. All right. I just thought that was a funny little joke. All right, cool. So next thing I will do is I will pass out a SciPy page just to kind of recap what we've worked on. If you find this page too difficult, I do have another worksheet you can do instead. Just let me know. I can give that to you. If you finish early, I also have some extension work as well. So I'll pass this out. You guys can have a go at this. I will give you a sticker for getting it done. Make sure it's glued into your book. Obviously glue it onto a new sheet because I want you guys to make space for your body. Alright, kiddos. Alright, I think once you guys are done with that page, so everybody take a seat. Fix the mask so they go over the nose. Fix the mask so they go over the nose. All right, the answers are in the board so you guys can check. The first one, force, is a push or pull. The unit is in newtons, and the measurement tool is the Newton meter, sorry. All right. You should have for your checklist contact, non-contact, non-contact, contact, non-contact. Double check your work. All right, and then for the downward force, it was weight, and for the upward force, it was support. Cool. Double check your work. Hopefully you guys got your right answers. All right, I'm going to move on, and we're going to move on to talking about some more of that mind map. Are we okay with that? All right. So some of you guys have already started thinking about this with the extra extension worksheet. If you haven't, that's okay. So when we think about forces, we need to think about if they are balanced or unbalanced. Those are two categories, and that's going to affect what we see motion-wise. So let's first talk about balanced. So if we have a balanced force, when we think about the net force, so we think about the net force diagram here, the net force is going to be 0.
0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
So 0 newtons, if we want it to be specific, I'll put a cross through the 0, so that way we know that's a 0 and not saying on. The other thing is we need to think about what type of motion would result in balanced forces, because we're trying to tie that motion and that force together. So if my forces are balanced, I have two potential types of motion that could occur. What's the first one if I have balanced forces? Any ideas? Stationary. If my forces are balanced, it's not moving. So if I was to draw a diagram to show something was not moving, I would just do my box and no arrows. Yeah, so like the table. The table's stationary right now, not moving. All right, what's another type of motion that we can get from balanced one? This will trip some of you guys up. Constant speed. So, just give me an example of a constant speed. It's always at the same speed. So, if I was on the motorway, what would my constant speed should be legally? 100. If you're going 20 on the motorway, I think you're going to annoy a lot of people. Kilometers per hour. If I was to draw my little diagram, what would my diagram look like? For my little car, for example. I know it's a very bad looking car. All right. I have my push force, which is coming from my engine, right? What about the friction? Would it be the same or would it be less or would it be more? It's the same because it's balanced. So we should have equal size arrows. So we have that push from the engine, and then we have the drag and the friction. And then we have drag and friction. So we think about cars, we want to have a nice car that has a good streamline, so that way it doesn't get a lot of drag, the air resistance. All right, what happens if I have an unbalanced force? Unbalanced force. What's the net force equal to?
1.
Could be 1. What else could it be? 2. Could be 10. It could be any number except which number? 0. So net force does not equal 0. So I have the canceling of the equal sign. All right, what are some examples of motion that are unbalanced? There are 2 that I want us to think about. When I get on the motorway, what am I doing? I'm speeding up. What's another word for speeding up? Driving. I am driving onto the motorway. I'm speeding up. What's the word? Starts with an A. Acceleration. Acceleration. So that's when we are speeding up our motion. If I was to draw my net force diagram, what's going to be bigger? The force of the engine or the drag? From accelerating? The engine force. What's another type of motion that's unbalanced? What happens when I get off the motorway? You slow down. What's another word for slowing down? Stopping? Starts with a D. Deceleration. Try to spell deceleration correctly because I'm a terrible speller. Decreasing your speed is a way you can describe it, but deceleration is a nice shorter word. All right, deceleration, so that's my decrease in speed. If I was decelerating with my little car, what's now the bigger force? The drag and that friction. The brakes. And then I might have a small arrow going with my engine, or maybe I have no arrow. Can you have no arrow? Yeah, because let's say I am taking my foot off the accelerator. So I'm not providing anything from the engine. Does that make sense? Yeah? Is that okay, revision? Yeah? All right. Just looking at the time. Let's see. If we should play a little Kahoot. Does that sound good? Or do you want to? Yeah? All right. So take your devices because you're going to need them for the final task as well. We'll do a Kahoot, and then I'll explain the final task for today. You guys want to play class mode or team mode? I was thinking you guys can work together if you want to kind of team. Let me explain the final activity for today. We'll probably finish this in the next period, which is 5. So, now that you guys, I have the wrong lesson number on it. You can say 6B. All right. All right. What I want you guys to do is apply the concepts that we talked about today with forces in motion and relate that into a sport. So on Google Classroom, let's go there and see what we're doing. So we're going to go to lesson 6B. As you guys notice with the instructions, one of the things that I put on here is a Google slide, force and motion in sports. So I want you to open that up. I want you guys to find a short sports video clip from YouTube. So it can be any sport. It can be basketball. It could be rugby. It could be cricket. I'm not fussed. And I want you to insert that video that you find. So to do that, you just go insert video, and then you can copy that URL from YouTube, or you can find it through YouTube as well. Then I want you guys to write a paragraph explaining the motion and forces that you see in that sports video. So explain to me what's happening with the ball, motion-wise, and tie it back into the forces to help explain why that is. So you're going to write a paragraph on that. Does that make sense to everybody so far? I am happy if you want to work individually or if you want to work in pairs to get this task done. But make sure you are writing down who it's created by and that you share it with your partner. So either pairs or individual. While you guys are working on that, I'll do a lolly check because I know a lot of you guys have rows completed if you want to cash in. And that's basically it. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to start on this, and then we'll finish it up in our next lesson. Find a video. Should be the goal. All right, everybody. Right, pause, time out. All right. We need to do a recap before you guys run away. All right. So to recap, you guys should know about forces and how it relates to motion. The success criteria is 12, 17, 19, 20, and 21. So, pause. I want you guys to take these off if you feel like you have them. If you feel like you have 12, 17, 19, 20, and 21 down, you can take them off. What do you do with the sound? So if you have a row done, take it off and then get yourself a lolly. All right. Feel free to put the books in the box over on the side. You have on the top shelf. Books on the top shelf over there. Let me show you where I want them. If you want to see the books home, you can bring them back on that side. Books go into the top shelf over here. Back here.